Hey there. So my next guest is an esports coach at a university, and after we got done with the interview, he was telling me about how the fact that he thinks he's possibly the youngest person who's coaching in esports on the collegiate side, and it's really cool because we get to hear his journey, and it's not quite the typical journey that you might think someone who in this position would have. He has ups, he has downs, and it's really inspiring to kind of hear his story. I know you're all going to love this one. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Paul Vaughan. Hey there, Paul. How's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
It's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. How about yourself?
It's a less sunny, more snowy power outage day here in Oklahoma.
I'm sorry to hear that. All right, Paul. I like getting the show started just right into it. So why don't you begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Paul. I'm only 24, very young in the esports space. I graduated from Boise State University after playing competitively for them in League of Legends and Overwatch. Immediately after graduating, I got a job at Oklahoma City University to be their head coach and esports coordinator. And for the last year, I've been running events, their competitive teams, and being a consultant for their degree program. Beautiful.
All right. We got a lot to talk about. Yeah. However, before we start, I ask every guest a single question before we get started, really. So I'm going to ask you just like I ask everybody else. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Paul?
I'd say I'd probably give myself about a 6. I think I'm probably weirder than the normal person, but I can put on the disguise and pretend to not be too weird for a little bit for interviews like these.
Paul was the imposter.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is the Gamerpreneur, so I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
Oh, man. My first experience playing video games was at a friend's house, I think in like 2002. They had a GameCube and they were playing Jedi Outcast, and I got into it a little bit and was terrible, had no idea what I was doing. Like the idea of 3D controls to a person who's never played games before is really, really confusing. I've watched it happen to my parents who've like tried to play 3D games that have like a WASD axis and then like also moving your mouse is like just too confusing for them. They can only do like one or the other. They will walk and then they'll stop and then use the mouse. But yeah, that's sort of like my first experience. And then I got like my first console as a GameCube in 2004, playing Metroid Prime. Wasn't really huge into it. I mean, I kind of like played GameCube games here and there growing up. But then I think in 2000, I'm trying to remember. Probably like, I think when I was in 8th grade, I don't remember the exact year, my older brother started playing StarCraft Brood War. And I was like, oh, what's this? This looks really cool. And of course, I got like the crappy family PC. He had like his own laptop, and I was always trying to play against him, always trying to beat him in it. I never could. He was always just way better than me. But I think that's what kind of started me being a little bit more competitive. I got really interested in just like, what can I do to strategize to beat this guy who's just he just plays so much faster than me. He always has more units than I do. And so I always like was looking up guides, trying to find a way to like get better to beat him. And I never ended up doing it. But then StarCraft 2 came out. I played that for a little bit. I think that was also around the time Minecraft came out, or like Alpha something was releasing at that time. Got into that, and I think those 2 games really sparked my love for online gaming. Not necessarily competitively, but just like as a social aspect.
I love it. You know, StarCraft has led a lot of people into esports, myself included.
Very
Except
cool.
Probably a few years before you. All right. What do you play today now, if anything?
Now I still keep up in League of Legends and Overwatch. Not as high ranked as I used to be in either of them. But I try and maintain at least a general competitive knowledge of what that looks like at all times. Off times, it's all just been like weird, the one-off party social games. I mean, you made an Among Us joke earlier. Got way into that with a big group of friends for a while. And then that led us to like all the other social interaction games. So there's like Pummel Party, Project Winter, Jackbox, of course. So like really just anything that you can get a group of people in, I've probably played it.
All right. Okay. Now, you have been playing since you said about 2004. So in all that time you've been playing, if you had to pick one game as your all-time favorite, which one would it be?
It's a really tough question. I usually give it by hours put in, and I think even despite that, it's probably League of Legends no matter what. I've retired from League of Legends like 6 times. I've like put it down and been like, okay, I'm never gonna play this game again. I'm done with it. I'm tired of it changing all the time. And then no matter what, just the depth of the game always brings me back. All the new stuff they always are releasing always brings me back. And it doesn't help that I think I've got so many friends through League of Legends at this point that it's so hard to just put that down and never look back at it.
I completely understand. That's how I feel about World of Warcraft. All right, Paul, let's get over to the preneur part, because what you're doing is really cool. But kind of before we get there, can you kind of walk me through your professional background? How did you end up here?
Yeah, so I think any opportunity in esports is part luck, part experience. For me, it was a lot of luck. I pretty much was raised in Boise, Idaho. Not really a place known for its esports. I mean, maybe now, but like back when I was there, absolutely not. So like think like 2016, esports was entirely centralized in California. I think it still somewhat is, but there's like other cities that are popping up now, like Kansas City. Small tangent. Let me get back to the question. I went to Moscow, Idaho, University of Idaho, a little bit smaller than Boise State University, 6 hours away to the north, just because I didn't really have much of a plan. I ended up dropping out after a year, moving back to Boise, and then took like one class at Boise State while working. Just like didn't want to stop college entirely and wanted to. I was under the assumption that I was going to stay in STEM. So I was taking like, I think a math class. So I wouldn't like drop any knowledge because I wanted to keep up in it. And then that same semester, I think I was trying to get in contact with the League of Legends club at Boise State because I was participating in it at Moscow, and there was the biggest campus or biggest club they had on campus. And I was like, oh, there's Boise State have one too. It was really fun up there. And I reach out, and the president, I guess, was leaving the university, didn't elect a new person. The student advisor or like the faculty advisor left the university. Like none of the staff had was passing on the reins of this club to the students. So I just kind of stepped in and was like, hey, can I just take over? Because I was like, I'm not gonna let this club die. League of Legends is awesome. So I talked to her about it. She said, yeah, sure. Just here's the contact info, and here's the student advisor you need to talk to take over the club. And so I just did it, held elections, thinking that someone else would want to step up and run this club, and then no one did. So I became club president kind of just by chance, and an unwillingness to let the League of Legends scene die at Boise State. That same year is the year that I got an email from one of my friends who was in another program at the university that said, hey, they're starting an esports team. You should talk to this person. And I just stormed into this office in one of the buildings on campus. And I said hey, my name's Paul. And that's how I met Chris Haskell, who's now the program director at Boise State. And so talks with him, became very well connected with him. Always loved hearing him talk. He was always just super smart. Played on his teams, helped him build the broadcast, and eventually all that experience led to me being hired at Oklahoma City University.
Okay, wonderful. Now, what is it that you do with Oklahoma City University?
So esports coaches in collegiate are an interesting role. I've never, I don't really know how to put it. It's, you do so many different things that it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's just you forget one thing, and all of a sudden you're getting an angry email you forgot to do this one small thing that was on your to-do list, but probably pretty far down on it. And there's just so much that you do on a day-to-day. So I recruit new students. I'm organizing tournaments. I'm on the advisory board for the high school league, the OESL. There's all the competitive games we run, coaching practices, scheduling scrims. It can be a little overwhelming, and so it's very important that you stay on top of everything that's coming at you at once. But yeah, it's a very, very many hats role.
All right, and aside from the many, many different hats, how is it different than being a player?
I think this is probably best answered by the quick transition I had to make from being a player to an authority figure. You can't be, it was a really like harsh reality thing I had to learn, but it was just like, you can't be friends with the players. You can be there for them, like help them, but you can't just like be buddy because it's going to ruin the power dynamic of you're the coach and you need to be able to tell them this is what you need to do and not just suggest it to them. So trying to come into that new role of these are no longer peers was like probably the most difficult part of transitioning from player to coach.
Okay. And how did you make that transition, personally? Because, was it a situation? Was it like someone told you? Like, how'd that happen?
It was, I think, just a personal realization. I was sitting in Jeff Price's office, who's the director of esports at Oklahoma City University. And he had 2 students come in pre-COVID. This was in February, so 1 month before it all started. 2 students come in, and I'm sitting there talking to them, and like I realized also in that moment that like I don't quite get Gen Z. I think I might detect. I've been called both Gen Z and millennial, but just like I needed to be someone that wasn't. I couldn't be like a student coach because this had to be something that meant more to them than that. I had to be like a very, very much like the person that they go to when there's a problem on the team, when there's a something that they want to do in school, like they're looking for advice. I can't just be an equal. I need to be something that they can look up to and ask things of.
Okay. Now, what does it take to be a coach? I've had other coaches on the show, but I don't think I've ever asked, like, what is the skill set that is required to do this particular job in esports?
I think the first thing is having the reach and the range. You have to very quickly pick up and learn games that your students are interested in. You have to be so ready constantly to just drop whatever you're doing and quickly pick up something new. Because like when I came to this university, we had an Overwatch team, a Call of Duty team, a Smash Bros team, and a Fortnite team. I didn't play 3 of those games. So I had to very quickly be acclimated to how does Call of Duty competitive work? What is a gentleman's agreement? Which is something that I think doesn't exist in any other esport. There's like all these small little things you have to very quickly learn. So like I didn't know that in Call of Duty there's not actually rules you can create. It's just like a agreement that everyone says like, okay, we're not going to use these attachments, this grenade, this like trophy. We're not going to only have 1 trophy system, no smoke grenades on these maps. And it's just like the weirdest thing to me, but it's just how the competitive system works. And it's just how something you have to learn very quickly is how do you run a tournament, or like how do you run a tournament for a gentleman's agreement system? How do you like set that up and let them know that this system is going to be running underneath gentleman's agreement rules? There's just like every single game is like a unique culture, a unique way to set up the competitive matches, and quickly acclimating that is something you have to learn very quickly.
All right, that's very interesting. Now, part of the purpose of my show is hopefully there's somebody out there listening to you going, wow, that sounds really cool. I'd love to be a coach in the esports space. What resources did you have to turn to in order to be able to kind of learn how to do this so others can follow in your footsteps?
I think it's gotten a lot easier, the barriers to entry in the last few years, in terms of knowledge at least. There's courses out there, NACAD, a great resource. There's, I think NACE is partnering with Skillshot Media to make a course for coaches, but there's educational resources out there for what it takes to be like an esports coach or director. I think it's going to come down to like, can these resources be built out so that they're publicly accessible? And then will institutions recognize the validity of these certificates? Because I don't think there's precedent for it right now. Most people that are getting hired right now in coaching roles are people who have previous experience in esports, or they're like a great administrator. So like, I guess like 2 examples that come immediately to mind. It's like Doc Haskell was a great administrator who was very tech-minded, and he had to do a lot of learning within the esports world, and he's done a great job, and he picked it up so quickly, and he's now one of the top programs in the US, right? And then there's like people like Clerky, Fuzzy Fetch, and Harrisburg, I'm blanking on his name, that are esports industry veterans that have like either done coaching or professional team management, and they're much more and that experience is even harder to get than I'd say than breaking into the coaching scene in collegiate. So it's a really interesting problem. I'm not sure exactly if there is a clear path to getting to a coaching role at a university. And I think everyone's story has been very unique from anyone else that I've like kind of learned to. But those are like two generically the ways that people have picked up the role. It's usually like they're a great administrator at their university. The university recognizes them. They go to them and ask them, hey, can we start an esports program? And then they start looking into it. Or it's just previous experience. And a university says, let's hire that guy.
Okay. Now, you personally, where are you going? What's the next 5 years of your life look like?
I think it's really up in the air. I feel like I've experienced so many different once in a lifetime things just within the last year. But yeah, I mean, esports is just growing, right? I don't know where Oklahoma City University necessarily is going to be in the next year, honestly. Every university kind of specializes in one area. And so we, over the next year, are going to have to figure out what kind of university in the esports world do we want to be. I mean, beyond that, it's really hard to give any kind of vision. The landscape itself is also constantly changing, so I don't know necessarily if I'll end up becoming a competitive coach once esports is seen as more of a need as like a traditional sports program where you need to have a director and then coaches, or if I'll end up moving into a director role where I'm more overseeing an entire program. I don't know. It's so hard to predict how fast it's going to grow, how slow it's going to go, if it's even going to become fully culturally accepted on the level of traditional sports. It's all a lot of question marks right now. So I'd say trying to make a 5-year plan when wheels out of this question, very difficult to do.
It's that typical interview question I had to ask you, right?
Totally fair.
All right. If you could go back in time, Paul, and you could go to your little Paul back when he was first starting college, all right? And you could tell him like what happened to you, all the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, but you wanted him to have a better life than you have now. So you give him all this advice, but there was one piece of advice he had to know in order to make it bigger, better, faster. What would you tell him?
I would have told him, I mean, like, I guess if I could have given him one piece of advice, it would have been just to go to Boise State, get into maybe something media related and tech related. So like my degree is in information technology management, which is a weird blend at Boise State between IT and business administration. I think really all the experiences I had were either maybe not necessary lessons, but definitely very helpful in everything I did to get where I am now. While I was going to Boise State, I had a job working as an audiovisual technician. So I learned so much about broadcasting equipment, cameras, software, like hardware, switches, sound mixing, things like that. So I mean, my experience, I think I had like this really unique blend that just led me to be kind of a perfect storm to have such a wide knowledge that I could then work into being a head coach at a university. I'm not sure what the right things to say to him would have been, other than go to Boise State, get a job in audiovisual, and then maybe switch your major to broadcasting, just because it's such a huge part of esports right now.
All right, Paul. Now, you did tell us a little bit about your background and some of the ups and downs that you've had. But I want to get a little personal with you if possible, because I believe that we learn the most in our life from our failures, not necessarily our successes. And you've obviously gotten some great successes in your life, but you also told us about some of your failures. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure in life? And what did you learn from it?
Biggest failure in life? Wow. I think it was probably the workload I put on myself my sophomore year of college at Boise State. So this is flashing back, full-time student, working part-time, but event work changes. And there are weeks or months even where you'll be working more than 40 hours a week. I was also on the competitive team at that time, so I was trying to maintain a high ranking and learning. I mean, League of Legends changes every 2 weeks, new jungler every single patch. And then on top of that, I was also running the club. And then having any personal life on top of that was just non-existent. I was so busy all the time that I never had time to like really do anything else. And my entire life became esports. When anything esports failed, I was like just devastated. Like if I became so involved in like every single ranked game I played. I was so involved in like anything that went on in the club. I was like, so it would just affect me so poorly emotionally. I think the biggest failure I did at that point, and I've made a lot of changes since then, was not having any kind of balance. I now do a few things outside of esports that I try and separate completely, just work and life. Like there's no crossover here. Just to make sure that I do have those moments where I can appreciate the part of my life that isn't entirely involved within esports, and that I won't ever be completely 100% invested in every single thing I'm doing in esports at like 100% of the time. I think it's a very dangerous. I've seen people succeed at it, but they've also burnt out very quickly, where everything they do is esports related. And it could be like well, now I have to make it, or what else is there? But I think it's much healthier to have those outside options, those things outside of esports that you can balance out your life with.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Now, kind of on the flip side, what is something that you're working to improve on yourself today?
My biggest, if Jeff is watching this, he'll probably know exactly what I'm about to say. It's working on my own competitiveness. I have a very collaborative mind. My usual go-to, if anyone ever has any problem with me, or if anyone like is stepping on my toes, my usual question to them is just like, how can we fix this? Like, it's not like this person's. I never think people are doing things maliciously. I just always think that like, I always try and take people at their word, or I'll take people and like they're doing this because it's good for them and not just to like hurt what we're trying to do. Esports is, I think, maybe a little bit different. I'm coming to realize that there are some very competitive folks out there, and that we need to be competitive with them. So I'm working on accepting that new mindset. It's been very difficult, in all honesty. It's just like it goes against like everything I guess like I've taught myself or experienced, and so coming into a new mindset's been very difficult.
That's the world generally, my friend. All right, Paul, this has been a fantastic interview. How do people find you? Where are you at on social media? How to connect with you and all that, please?
Yeah, you can find me on, I'm not on too much social media. Don't hit me up on Facebook. I think I used that just to organize a tournament once. So LinkedIn at Paul Vaughan, Twitter at Call Me Soulpan, and then also follow OCU Esports on Twitter and check out our stuff.
Beautiful. All right. Now, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
Just a general appreciation. Thanks for letting me come on the show. Super great interview. I feel like not enough interviews get personal with the person. They're much more just about like their career. And so it's really cool to kind of hit that personal level, and that the getting into the struggles of every person, I think, is really interesting. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I genuinely do appreciate you coming on with us today.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.